councillors and members of the audience, welcome to tonight's meeting. The City of Port Phillip respectfully acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we are meeting on today. We pay our respects to elders both past and present. We acknowledge and uphold their continuing relationship to this land. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 31st meeting of the year and the final meeting of the year. I remind all attendees here this evening, particularly those members of the public that are addressing councillors, that please extend your common courtesy and respect to council officers and councillors, particularly in terms of the direction of the chair, which is myself, whenever you're called to do so. Speakers must remain respectful and statements or questions must not be defamatory, offensive, objectionable, aimed at embarrassing a councillor or a member of council staff or relate to a matter outside council matters. Quick introduction of councillors this evening. From Lake Ward we have Councillor Copsey, Councillor Sirikoff and Councillor Bond. From Gateway Ward we have Councillor Consolo to my left, myself and Councillor Martin. And from Canal Ward we have Deputy Mayor Baxter, Councillor Louise Crawford, and we're pleased to welcome Councillor Rhonda Clark, who is dialling in virtually this evening. Just a quick note on the virtual meeting format that we're operating under this evening. So there's 8 councillors in the chamber and 1 online. Voting will take place by a clear show of hands. In the event that is not possible to be conducted, a vote will be done under division, which I will call, or another councillor is obviously free to call. So, councillors, if you have any disputes around voting in terms of show of hands, etc., please feel free to raise a question at the time or alternatively call a division. If there's any technical errors, we may take an adjournment, but we ran under this format rather unexpectedly last week. So hopefully, Councillor Clark, if you just let us know if you have any issues in terms of being unable to hear, etc. Now move to item number 1 of tonight's meeting, which is apologies, and we're all here, so we'll move to item number 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. Councillors, the minutes of the meeting of the 1st of December 2021 have been circulated. Any questions? There being none, I'll ask a councillor to move to confirm these minutes. Councillor Sirikoff, and second by Deputy Mayor Baxter. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Councillors, I'll now move to section 3, or item number 3 rather, which is declarations of conflict of interest. Mr CEO, I understand you have one.
Thank you. And through you, Mayor, I have a material conflict in confidential report 17.2. At the time the council considers that item, I'll leave the meeting and ask Claire Stevens, Executive Manager, People, Culture and Safety, to assume my chair.
Thank you, Mr Smith, and I should have recognised you as tonight's presiding officer also. Councillor Copsey.
Thank you. I wish to declare that I own a property within the general area of 351 St Kilda Rd and also one action item within report 10.4, the public space strategy, and out of an abundance of caution to avoid a potential or perceived conflict of interest, I will remove myself from the meeting when those items are discussed.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey and Mr CEO, for your transparency in relation to those items. I'll now move to item 4, which is public question time and submissions. We'll now hear from all public questions and public comments on report items. We have a combination of people here in person, which is fabulous, and thank you for making the effort and time to be here, as well as some people joining us virtually online this evening. I'll ask you to keep your comments to be respectful, obviously, as we detailed before, and to 3 minutes if possible. So I now call upon Rhonda Small, submitting a question to Councillor. Rhonda, would you just come to the podium, please, and state your name and suburb? And welcome.
Rhonda Small, St Kilda. On Monday the 6th of September 2021, the Acting Minister for Local Government, Mary-Ann Thomas, announced the new local council lending framework, giving councils access to lower interest rates financed through the Treasury Corporation of Victoria. Being able to borrow directly from the TCV means councils can fund general working capital needs as well as project-specific infrastructure. So just 2 questions. Has the City of Port Phillip applied to the TCV already to have the extent of its potential borrowing capacity assessed? And if not, why not? And second, how does the CFO and the CEO view the potential of such low-interest government loans for the City of Port Phillip to fully achieve timely implementation of the 10-year council plan, especially given, for example, the ageing condition of some council assets, the St Kilda Library redevelopment plan, the need for land acquisition to begin to address inequities in public open space across the municipality, not to mention the need for more social and affordable housing and renewal of our high streets. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call upon Jennifer Blunt, the Acting Chief Financial Officer of Council. Welcome, Jennifer. You might just move the microphone down to be a bit more comfortable. That's it.
Through you, Mayor, Council has not applied to Treasury Corporation Victoria to have our potential borrowing capacity assessed. Council recently repaid its $7.5 million loan in full in November and currently has no loans outstanding. Council's borrowings are reviewed annually as part of the 10-year financial plan, annual budget and as needed for large significant projects. As per the updated 10-year financial outlook that is presented to Council tonight, one of the key financial principles is to ensure appropriate use of borrowings and reserves, and funding decisions are in accordance with key financial sustainability indicators. Council may build up general and specific reserves over time to enable Council to part fund periodic large capital expenditure where this is considered more efficient than the use of borrowings. The 10-year financial outlook proposed tonight fully funds Council's 10-year proposed capital program, including funding for the South Melbourne Townhall and St Kilda Library redevelopment using Council's proposed annual operating surpluses and asset renewal reserves. The program for strategic land acquisitions is funded as per Council's proposed public space strategy. The 10-year financial outlook does not include any proposed future borrowings. However, there is significant borrowing capacity to respond to capital and investment initiatives into the future with due consideration to Council's capacity to deliver any expansion in the capital program. Council will review and consider lending options, including low-interest government loans, as and when borrowings are required and in accordance with Council's procurement policy.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Rhonda, you're also down for 10.4. I'm happy to take that now if you're comfortable doing it again. Just for the record, you get to state your name and suburb again for me, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Rhonda Small, St Kilda. And can I also just wish everybody a happy holiday season, given this is your last meeting, and thank you for your service to the community for this year.
That's much appreciated. I'll restart your timer.
Thank you.
That's right. We do sincerely appreciate that. Thank you.
The Port Phillip Emergency Climate Action Network has submitted a number of suggested amendments to the office's recommendation for the adoption of the public open space strategy to 2022 to 2032. And there'll be some other people speaking about other parts of the suggested amendments, but I'm going to focus on the last 5, E to I, in the submission. The first, I think, is straightforward, which asks Council to begin immediate engagement with the state government to advocate for new open space being incorporated into the Big Housing Build social housing program. Any proposed public housing redevelopments funded under the Big Housing Build in Port Phillip should include new and adequate open space provision, especially in areas where deficits have been identified in the strategy. The next is a request that the strategy should include a clear process for officers to report to councillors on any opportunities arising for land acquisition, and I know there is a plan to develop a land acquisition process, but that will take some time. So in order to begin to address these identified inequities in the provision of public open space in areas lacking such space, we feel that it really needs to start immediately, this process of reporting back to councillors. Because it's critical that, having identified the need for land acquisition, that there is actually a process in place for informing councillors of land that comes up for sale as soon as it does so timely decisions can be made and rare opportunities to purchase land are not missed. We would also like to see a review of the Port Phillip planning scheme to increase the percentage of mandatory open space contributions. It's 5% currently, except I think in Fisherman's Bend where it's 8%. And direct contributions to land acquisitions in areas deficient in public open space. Given the neighbourhood inequities identified and the costs involved in addressing them, it's timely and critical, in fact, to include such a review during the life of this strategy. Likewise, we recommend that Council consider unlocking the $26 million Resorts and Recreation Reserve to bring forward the land acquisition program proposed for areas deficient in open space so that it comes into the short-term time frame. And finally, we believe it's critical that progress towards reducing public space inequities be carefully monitored and actions modified or new projects introduced in collaboration with affected communities. So we recommend that Council reports annually on progress towards what might be hopefully amended targets specified in measuring our success, and importantly engage meaningfully with communities to ensure proposals can be amended or modified as may be needed through the life of the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now go to one of our virtual participants, Diane D'Orazio. Can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
We can hear you loud and clear. If you just state your name and your suburb, and your 3 minutes starts when you start.
It's Diane D'Orazio, and it's Melbourne. Just with regards to Brooklyn's apartments where I live, have a few concerns about the building 464 on St Kilda Rd. 4 concerns. Question 1, I guess, is my big concern is about the increase in traffic and impact on road conditions, access and exit from the car park. I note that access to the building with significant increase in stories and hence increase in population to the site solely from Queen's Lane, whereas previously this was a smaller building with 2 access points. I note that the comment of a minimum of additional 33 vehicles on Queen's Lane during peak hour, which is unclear if refers to construction period and heavy vehicle stay on the site at Queen's Lane. In fact, traffic conditions have been very poor during build of Victoriana, with road collapsing numerous times, creating multiple hazards for passerby, prams, and after the Victoriana build, further significant concerns re traffic within the single lane. My second question is, could Council reassure in a formal letter to our Strata Committee that safety and services to residents would not be compromised during or after the build? And if it is, what penalty, given recent experience with the Victoriana, would the builder or Council agree to? Third, would the Council commit to discount their council fees, given the trouble it causes existing residents and the overall increase in profits? Please consider many people have suffocated greatly from a financial point of view during these Victorian lockdowns. We don't need a rubber stamp from the councillors, but an improved utilities and services. And last but not least, Brooklands and Bendigonia's subcommittee building specific concerns would be that the shade from the proposed building may negatively affect the health of the Moreton Bay fig tree that is heritage listed and an integral part to the Brooklands building.
Thank you for those questions. Can I ask the officers to address these now, if possible? We were asking questions at 10.7. It is, yeah. Okay, there's 4 pretty clear questions there, though, if we could get those prepared before we get to the item, and we'll take that one off the proposal that we had beforehand, if that's okay. Okay. If you need clarification of those questions, officers, the 4 questions, I've got them written down here because we didn't get a submission beforehand, so we'll do our best to make sure we get that answered for you. Thank you for your contribution. I now call upon Dennis Jones speaking to item 7.1, petition on dangerous Hoon driving, excessive noise and toxic fumes across Port Melbourne. Dennis, welcome to the meeting this evening. Just get you to state your name and your suburb, please. And your 3 minutes starts when you do.
Thank you very much. Dennis Jones, Port Melbourne. I'd like to speak very briefly to the petition we have submitted to Council regarding anti-hooning and very specifically road safety. We live adjacent to Station Pier, which has become a clubhouse for Hoons and a public toilet for Hoons as well. Also joining me as two speakers that are my neighbours, Rudy and his daughter Leah, will speak very personally about their recent experience. I believe, well, firstly I'd like to thank Council for the funding to rent the mobile CCTV system that's been on Station Pier for 3 weeks and noticeably very effective in deterring the Hoons over that time, but we're sure they're back because now it's been moved down to St Kilda, who I believe have a greater need at the moment, but we'd like to see it back again. Clearly, Station Pier has become an epicentre for this hooning activity. It is really terrible, and I believe Council are responsible. I've had it confirmed that as yesterday that Council are responsible for the safe operation of the car park public area on Station Pier, and it's very clear that it is not safe. It is often very, very unsafe. So our proposal is for automatic boom gates, CCTV camera systems, at least a half a dozen cameras to be placed on the pier permanently, and of course the area around the restaurants there to be made for motorbikes not to park in that area. So I was pleased to hear that there's funding available now for Council at about 2%. I think it's less than the government bond rate. I hadn't heard about that one, but it might be great to access that funding to cover the cost of boom gates, for example, which would then cover them, would be on an ongoing basis pay for themselves. When the Hoons are there, no one pays for parking. I've also asked recently for the revenue relating to the car park in that area because I'm sure it's been compromised by this hooning problem. I'd like to... Do I introduce the next two speakers or do I leave it to you on this issue?
Yeah, sorry, pardon me. I was chatting away in the background. You busted me, Dennis. I appreciate that.
Sorry for that.
No, that's
by
fine.
the way, I'd like to thank Councillor Clark too for, I believe, your recent motion regarding more policing in the area. And I think the use of technology to support policing in the area would be very, very useful and probably more cost-effective. Read CCTV cameras. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. I now call on Rudy Heitbarn and Leah. Feel free to come up as well. No problem. If you'd like to speak together, I'll give you the 6 minutes combined, but I'll just get you to both start by introducing yourself and your suburb, please.
Yep, Rudy Heitbaum, Port Melbourne.
Leah Heitbaum, Port Melbourne.
Welcome.
Thank you, councillors and mayor, for indulging us with, I guess, our experience with the hooning behaviour. So we've been in 105 Beach Street since 2015, and we have my daughter Abigail. She's just finished school at year 12, and Rebecca and our Chihuahua Poppy. So Leah is just finished year 10, and our experience with the hooning, I guess, has been through that time period. I guess my version of this is, until the 20th of November, I had never called 000 regarding the hooning behaviour. I've called 000 before, people on pavements and stuff like that. That's how bad that evening actually was. My experience on that was that these clouds of smoke were actually coming through the apartment block and drifting across Beach Street, and the noise that was actually occurring outside. I've seen many things over the years. We've seen, months ago, motorbikes, having tyres actually burnt off them. I've seen and heard the revving and the like, but that evening it was something else. It wasn't just out of a movie set. I'm a bit of a film buff. Fast and the Furious has got nothing on this. It had got to the point where I went outside, I didn't put shoes on, just had shorts and t-shirt, and took the mobile phone out there. I'd been out there with a mobile phone before and taken some imagery. I have a good camera and had taken license plate photos from our balcony. We can see straight into that area in that the station pier. So I'm there taking some imagery, short, 20-second, 30-second videos. And the Hoons themselves had actually turned the section that comes from the station pier towards the pedestrian crossing into a drag strip. They were doing burnouts at the top end and racing across the pedestrian crossing. There were little kids out there at that time. There was a wedding that was going on that evening in one of the restaurants. Just astounding that this was occurring. Now, they were all hanging around the start of where they were doing these burnouts, cars sliding around and the like. The cars were actually getting to the
just to note, you've just passed 3 minutes. You've got 3 minutes to go. Just wanted to remind you.
Thank you. So those experiences, I guess, were one of the reasons why I've discussed with Dennis in the past, but we'd actually got to the point where it's wrong. And I guess my emotive speech on this one is that, a bit later in that evening, so this only happened for about half an hour, I was assaulted by one of the Hoons trying to smash my phone. At that time, I called the police. They attended. They were actually quite concerned for my well-being and said, are you okay? Do we need an ambulance? The like. Those moments and how I felt after that, you're shaken. It's not something that I would do on a daily basis and experience. Those experiences, I guess, is what I bring to you, and that's the impact that it's having in the area. It's regular.
Okay, Rudy, we've got 2 minutes left.
Yep. It's impacting, I guess, the life of not just us, but many of the residents. And I guess Leah might just talk to some of her experiences and her friends and what they've done.
Welcome, Leah.
Thank you. My friends I've quite a few friends around the area, and they get affected by it as well. And then my friends in the complex, after dark, we stay in the courtyard because we don't feel safe going out where all the Hoon cars are, because it's quite loud and it's quite dangerous for us. And I go to school tired because I've been kept up by the Hoon cars and that.
Walking the dog?
Oh yeah, and walking the dog. I won't walk the dog when it's dark because I don't feel safe with all the Hoon cars going around really fast, both on Beach Street and Station Pier.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you for your time.
That's fine. Leah, I've got a quick question for you. How did you feel before the Hoon events happened in terms of your personal safety in the area?
I was all right about it because I didn't really understand how bad it was. But then, I realised how dangerous it was, and it just got, scarier. And, being a kid, it's quite scary being in that situation, in that area.
Okay, thank you for coming here this evening. It's a brave thing to do, and we're sincerely grateful for you coming in to speak to us tonight. And all the very best for your VCE next year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you, guys. I now call upon Jack Halliday speaking to item 10.4, Places for People, Public Space Strategy 2022 to 2032. Welcome, Jack.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much. Sorry, I failed to mention you were virtually here, so if you just state your name, Jack, and your suburb, please.
Yeah, Jack Halliday from Balaclava. Thank you, Mayor. I want to speak about the section in the public space strategy on measuring and reporting and the implication it has for additional open space in the most disadvantaged areas of St Kilda East and Balaclava without ready access to open space. In these areas, there are 18 projects which reflect favourably that Council has paid attention to these areas of greatest need. 3 involve new open space and 5 are temporary or trial projects. In each neighbourhood, projects are assessed against 4 indicators. The first of these is the percentage of projects on track. In 2027, the target is to have at least 40% on track, and in 10 years at least 60%. With targets this low, it seems impossible to fail, especially as 30% of the projects are temporary or trials. The second indicator is the number of open spaces rated as good or high quality, and the same targets apply, of at least 40% in 5 years and at least 60% in 10 years, as do the same concerns. The third indicator is delivery of new open spaces. There are 3 in St Kilda East and Balaclava. We think the bar has been set very low in this case of at least 20% in 5 years and at least 60% in 10 years. Now, this is quite complicated with new open spaces. 20% of 3 projects is 0.6 of a project, and 60% of the 3 projects is 1.8 projects, say 2. Again, very difficult to fail over 10 years. 2 of the projects are targeted in 10 years' time, the Carlisle Street Shopping Centre and a new land acquisition. We realise that land purchase is not an overnight proposition, but again, this is a very distant target. By 2032, population growth in these densely populated areas will result in open space falling well below its present 7 square metres per head, by far the lowest in Port Phillip. Albert Park, Middle Park, by comparison, is 91 square metres per head. We strongly believe that Council should bring forward the purchase of new property in the main gap area identified in the technical report, consistent with our proposed Amendment 3.1c. The fourth indicator is the percentage of the municipality within safe walking distance of parks, gardens and reserves. Why hasn't Council used the standard which is commonly in use as referenced in the technical report and to be adopted in Fisherman's Bend, providing a maximum distance to be walked in the minimum size for the park or reserve? Council is committed to start work on a climate emergency action plan. Such plans are characterised by setting exacting timelines and in some cases adopting stretched targets, which reflect the speed at which our climate is changing. Land acquisition here should be one such target, and then in the case we're talking about, it should be brought into the short-term time frame in our conviction.
Thanks, Jack. If you can come to the end, that'd be great. Oh, you're at the end. Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
My pleasure. I'll now go to Chris Sargood, also speaking to item 10.4, Places for People, Public Space, Strategy 2022 and 2023. And I should have also just noted for Jack Halliday that one of the councillors may take some of those questions up if the officers could take note of those. Chris, welcome. If you just take your name and your suburb, that'd be great.
Thank you. Can I start in 3 minutes again now?
Absolutely.
Chris Sargood from Elwood.
Go for it.
I want to speak about the public space strategy. The document itself is amazing. There's 25 pages of community engagement summary and 420 pages of tech report. So it's obviously been very thoroughly researched. What I want to talk about is a lot of the things I want to say, it comes from the documents themselves. And the first and most crucial thing is that COVID has demonstrated the need for public space in Port Phillip. Something that hasn't been quite so clearly identified is also the need for off-leash dog spaces. There are now hundreds of more dogs in the area than there were before. In fact, there's a name for these puppies now. They're called isopups. And if you see someone walking along the street in Elwood now, you'll see they've either got a cup of coffee in one hand or a puppy on a lead in the other. So dogs are now becoming a most critical part of the social fabric of much of Elwood. The other thing that's been clearly identified in the report is that Port Phillip has diverse and distinctive neighbourhoods. And the reason I mention that is because some of the assumptions or the conclusions reached, I think, don't necessarily apply across all neighbourhoods. For instance, 4.10 says that the community is most excited about having more off-leash dog parks. On the other hand, 4.12 said that this is not necessarily the case across all neighbourhoods. But if you look closely into the detail of it, you'll see that Elwood is one of the areas that is most interested in off-lead dog parks, whereas, for instance, Port Melbourne is not nearly as interested, and they feel they have enough already. The plan has identified the M.O. Moran Park as a potential area, or in fact it's approved that as an area for off-leash dog parks. The problem with the M.O. Moran is it's not fenced. It will be very expensive to fence that. And secondly, it's a long way from a fair part of Elwood. So if you look at in the technical report, there's area EL3, the M.O. Moran dog park is probably 20 to 30 minutes walk for a puppy from any areas east of Tennyson Street. So that can mean you have sort of like 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back, an hour's gone before you've even had a chance to have an off-leash experience with your pup. So I think what we need is something closer to the central part of Elwood. Now, there is the Clark Reserve there at the moment, and that is very small, it's not fenced, and there is a child's playground, a very good child playground, right on the corner there.
Chris, we've just passed 3 minutes. If you can come to the end, please feel free.
Yeah, and they're planning to enhance that as well. So I don't feel that that's really a good example of, or a good result for dog owners in Elwood. What I think is going to be a better solution is the very contentious Elwood Primary School Park. That's fenced, it's large, and it's an area that's very close to the centre of Elwood. The problem is that it's owned by the Department of Education and managed under contract, as I understand it, by the City of Port Phillip.
Thanks, Chris. I'll get you to conclude if you could, please.
Okay, so the question is, how can we, dog owners, implement the recommendations of the community engagement summary to have a dog park in central Elwood?
Perfect, and we'll make sure that's taken up for you in terms of your question when we get to the report. I now call upon Justin Halliday speaking to item 10.4, Places for People, Public Space and Strategy 2022 to 2032. Just get you to state your name and your suburb for me, Justin, and your 3 minutes will start when you start.
Good evening, Justin Halliday, St Kilda East. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. My name is Justin Halliday. As I mentioned, I'm a member of PCAN. I'm speaking to one of the parts of our submission regarding item 10.4, the public space strategy. Specifically where I wanted to start by commending the council for the strategy's commitment to addressing the lack of equitable access to public open space in certain neighbourhoods. Those neighbourhoods that we have identified include St Kilda East, Balaclava, Ripponlea, and in the report, some parts of St Kilda Rd and South Melbourne as well. The areas east of Brighton Road that we're speaking to tonight have less than 5% public open space, compared to over 20% for the rest of the city. And even recognising the inequity faced by residents in these areas, the strategy, however, does very little to address these inequities, and the main actions that it does propose to address them won't be delivered until almost 10 years from now. One key opportunity that we have proposed and identified in this area is the establishment of a linear park between Alma Park and Ripponlea. This proposal would follow the train line there, use existing reserves and public space and major thoroughfares. And we've proposed this under the title of the Green Line, and you'll see certain parts of that in the strategy itself. The Green Line proposal will provide much needed public open space. It will improve walking accessibility, biodiversity and tree canopy cover without requiring any property acquisitions. However, at the moment, the proposals for this are some temporary testing areas around the Balaclava station and no real action at the moment on the proposal. So we call on Council to deliver on its commitment to equitable access to public open space by accelerating the establishment of the Green Line, and by doing this, we'd like the Council to fund a full feasibility study of the Green Line proposal, including possible connections through Stonington and Glen Ira as well. Thank you, Councillors. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I now call upon Adam Barmond, speaking to item 10.5, planning report, which is the rear of 285 to 287 Coventry Street and 10 Hotham Street, South Melbourne. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Adam Barmond from South Melbourne. I'm the owner of a commercial property and medical business at 141 Cecil Street, South Melbourne. It's the business backs onto the laneway to the west of Chez Dre, which is a cafe that's making this application. And off onto the laneway, one of the two exits to the cafe are located. In regard to the application and further to formal objections that myself and 6 other property owners made throughout the year, I'd like to request your consideration in repealing a Section 57A amendment made to the planning application in September of this year. It pertains to the closing of the cafe's easterly Hotham Street exit after 6 p.m. If this amendment is upheld, our dead-end cobblestone laneway will be relegated the only exit from Chez Dre from 6 to 11 p.m. each day. To this point, I'd also like to formally request the applicant amend the planning permit to have the laneway exit closed from 6 p.m, with the Hotham Street exit being the sole door after this time. We find the September amendment to be illogical, unbalanced and unfair, especially considering that the Hotham Street cafe exit is a much more suitable late-night exit due to it being an established thoroughfare with footpaths and street lighting. Quoting from the planning report, for the application, the senior urban planner states, and I quote, "The public lighting and street design is appropriate for the movement of vehicles and pedestrians within Hotham Street." In regard to our laneway, the planner also acknowledges that technically, and I quote, "both pedestrians and vehicles have the right of way to pass and repass in the lane." However, unlike the statement made about Hotham Street, there's no mention of the laneway's public lighting and street design being appropriate for the movement of vehicles and pedestrians. I suggest the reason for this is that the laneway is quite inappropriate for mixed vehicle and pedestrian use. I also suggest that this inappropriateness will be compounded by the increase in Chez Dre's operating hours and subsequent increase in patron numbers solely exiting into our laneway at night. I appreciate that the Hotham Street residents are concerned about noise impacts to nearby residential properties from exiting cafe patrons and vehicles picking up and dropping off. I also appreciate that Chez Dre's extended trading hours will likely diminish the general amenity of Hotham Street properties, including adverse impacts on sleep, increased antisocial behaviour and security issues arising from intoxicated patrons. However, shifting these problems to our dead-end high-walled laneway, in which multiple tenants' bedrooms and businesses directly abut, is inappropriate.
Great. We've just passed 3 minutes. If you could come to the end, that'd be great.
Sure. I understand that one of the objectives of the local strategies for South Melbourne Central include creating a great place to live by, ensuring that the intensification of business activity does not result in undue loss of amenity to nearby residential properties. I suggest that the intensification of Chez Dre's business activity, especially in regard to solely funneling increased patron numbers in a laneway at night, is in stark contrast to this objective. Councillors, I again implore you to repeal the 57A amendment to close the licensed venues Hotham Street after 6 p.m.
Thank you.
And request that the can amend the planning permit to have Shay Dray's laneway exit closed from 6 p.m, with Hotham Street being the sole exit after this time.
Okay.
Thank you for
very
your
much.
consideration.
I now call upon Julia Freaker, speaking to item 10.6, planning report, which is 81 Beacon Vista, Port Melbourne. Julia, can you hear us virtually?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Welcome. If you get you state your
Frecker.
name, and as soon as you start talking, I'll start the 3 minutes.
Great. Julia Frecker, South Melbourne. Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I am a town planner from Urban Edge Consultants, and I'm speaking on behalf of residents of 11 Narooma Place and 24 and 28 The Crescent, Port Melbourne, in relation to the proposed development at 81 Beacon Vista. We maintain that the proposed development does not achieve the desired design outcomes under the Neighbourhood Character Overlay, Precinct C. The subject site contains one of 6 tower forms which are located along the northern boundary of the precinct. The tower form is an immediately recognisable reference to the maritime history of the area and marks a legible entry point to the precinct. The 2 towers on the northern end of the vista at the subject site, number 81, and its mirror form at number 86, frame the Leading Lights heritage landmark and create a visual impact. It is considered that the proposed additions, particularly the increase in roof height, will detract from the visual prominence of this tower element. Changes to the roof do not match the existing roof or complement the prevailing character of roof forms in the area. The character overlay requires that replacement roofs match the style of the existing roof and maintain the visual prominence of the tower element. Therefore, we contend that the roof should be retained in its original condition at a height well below the tower element. The enlarged roof form will impose visual bulk to the detriment of the surrounding area, and as viewed from habitable spaces and private open space of the abutting dwelling at number 28 The Crescent. This view from habitable windows is expected to be encumbered by the proposed extension, and it will compromise an outlook that currently benefits from natural light and city views. Similarly, we maintain that the proposed amendment to bring forward the garage form by 1.91 metres to be in line with the frontage does not support the character objective, which intends to minimise the visibility of garages. This will change the garage to be visually dominant as viewed from the street, particularly given that the subject site is positioned on an angle at the end of a cul-de-sac and surrounds the heritage beacon. Therefore, the proposed changes are not in accordance with the relevant design principles and therefore not respectful to the neighbourhood character overlay. The above concerns are reflected by the residents of 11 Narooma Place, 24 and 28 The Crescent, and for the avoidance of doubt, we do not think that the proposed condition relating to a reduction in the height proposed by Council addresses our concerns, particularly as we have not viewed detailed amended plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. I appreciate that. I now call upon Gary Glover, speaking to item 10.7, which is the report on 464 to 466 St Kilda Rd, Melbourne. Gary, welcome. If you could state your name and your suburb.
Gary Glover, Melbourne, 3004.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to address Council this evening. I've previously, in a consultation meeting, raised a number of concerns that we have regarding the proposed development of 464, 466 St Kilda Rd. A lot of that relates to the fact that we now own an apartment in the Victoriana building on level 15, and the mass and size of the building that's proposed to go at 464, 466 St Kilda Rd will significantly affect the amenity of our apartment and a number of others in the Victoriana building. Our apartment faces east, and with the proposed construction that's going to be on the site, it would totally block out our natural light to our living space and our balcony, and would overshadow our building. Following the consultation meeting that was previously held, we'd requested copies of an overshadowing report study, the engineering report, which suggests that the building is not suitable to be redeveloped in its current form, and also a copy of the heritage report, and we've received none of those to date. And I also raised a number of concerns regarding traffic management in the area, access and egress, because Queen's Lane is becoming extremely congested, and the more access that's provided into Queens Lane, the worse that situation is going to be in regard to pedestrians and vehicles, where there's quite a conflict, particularly with the movement of garbage trucks and a number of other heavy vehicles up and down Queens Lane, and the fact that access onto St Kilda Road will now be stopped in relation to the proposed development exacerbates that situation. And there's been no traffic management analysis provided either, which we'd sought when we first attended the consultation meeting. So there's the other question I had was in relation to the heritage issue. This is quite a significant heritage building, as I understand, and the developers have suggested that this is going to be a like-for-like development, but in actual fact the building would be going from 8 levels to 16, and I don't quite understand how that would be a like-for-like development in protecting a significant heritage building. And it's certainly going to have a significant impact on the amenity for a lot of the residents that are now living in that area and use Queens Lane and also the natural light that's provided from St Kilda Road at the present time. So they're the main issues that we wanted to raise at this point in time. And the other issue I wanted to flag too is I understand that there's a significant oversupply of office and living accommodation in the St Kilda Road precinct at the present time. So I didn't quite comprehend how this proposal was going to add significant economic benefit to the area.
Thanks very much, Gary. I appreciate your
time.
contributions this evening. I now call upon Eliza Webberley speaking to item 10.7, which is the planning report, again, 464 to 466 St Kilda Road. Eliza, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much. So my name is Eliza Fisher-Webberley from Urbis, and I'm the planning consultant on behalf of the permit applicant. This application proposes an exciting and well thought out development that is respectful of the existing heritage significant building on the site and will complement the existing and emerging built form trends within this established development corridor. The site is unique in nature, featuring the heritage significant Backer House building. With this in mind, from the inception of the project, heritage restoration and preservation has been a key consideration of the redevelopment. And to ensure this was achieved, reputable heritage consultants level 10 have been engaged prior to the proposed development being conceived. Early engagement with council was also undertaken, including multiple pre-application meetings with council's planners and heritage advisors to ensure that any redevelopment of the site is an appropriate response to the heritage significance of the Backer building. The permit applicants, Abacus Property Services, own a number of other heritage significant sites and are experienced with redeveloping these sites to protect the ongoing heritage contribution of existing buildings. The applicant's intention has always been how to best retrofit and repurpose this heritage significant building. In terms of planning formalities, the site's located within the Commercial 1 zone and is affected by 2 design development overlays, the heritage overlay and special building overlay. The site is strategically located with high accessibility to Melbourne Central City and is located within the principal public transport network, with excellent access to tram and bus routes, as well as the future Anzac station. The additional built form proposed under this development has taken careful cues from the surrounding developments along St Kilda Road, as directed under DDO 26. The proposed development has carefully designed to meet the DDO built form guide.
Thank you. That's it?
Has been contextualised by
I didn't think so. Eliza?
Setback has been provided to St Kilda Road to enhance the green corridor along this frontage. And Queens Lane, while ensuring no unreasonable impacts on adjoining allotments. We note that council officers have recommended an additional setback to the rear interface, which the project team are not seeking to challenge and is considered to further enhance this interface. The applicant is an experienced office tenancy operator who has implemented this knowledge and experience into the internal design of new office floor plates to provide future employment opportunities in an excellent area that is well serviced by public transport. We support council officers' recommendation for an approval for this application to be issued.
Thank you very, very much. If you have that statement on email or in writing, if you could email that to one of the officers, which I'll get them to send you an email now. You just broke up for a moment, for probably 15 seconds in the middle. So I just, in terms of due process, I just want to make sure we have that. So if you want to email that to us, we've probably got half an hour, 40 minutes before we actually get to the item, and that can then be distributed to councillors. So one of the officers will send you an email shortly. If you just reply to that, if you have your notes ready there, that would be terrific.
Absolutely, happy to do. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your contribution this evening. We have received a further submission to be read out on behalf of a member of public. I'll now... there's only the single one, so I'll now ask our Head of Governance to read that out, and it's in relation to item 10.4.
Through you, Mayor, and the submission is from Peter Moratis, and it's in relation to item 10.4. The submission reads, despite equity being identified as the most important of the criteria used to identify the need for open space, the area east of St Kilda Rd can't expect much improvement from the strategy. At present, Balaclava and St Kilda East have 5% of open space within their total area of 234 hectares. By comparison, Albert Park, Middle Park have 31% open space in a total area of 352 hectares. Overall, open space across the whole of the municipality is 16.7%, but St Kilda East, Balaclava is at the bottom of the table. The population in Albert Park, Middle Park is declining, while in St Kilda East and Balaclava, population is anticipated to increase by nearly 10% by 2041, and the amount of open space per person is anticipated to fall from 7 to 6 square metres. In terms of council expenditure through this year's council plan, St Kilda East Balaclava receive $179.75 per head of population, removing the Inkerman Street bike corridor, compared to Albert Park Middle Park receiving $589 per head, and Port Melbourne $1,268 per head. Ripponlea receives $27 per head. The only effective means of addressing these inequities is by raising the amount of open space through land acquisition. The Lansdowne Road project is quite small and, while welcome, won't make any significant change in the metrics above. In Carlisle Street, the Woolworths and Coles car parks are to be sold, but provision of new open space arising from this sale is not in prospect until the 2030 to 32 period. However, it appears that any land acquisition will await the preparation of a land acquisition and road discontinuance study. Throughout the last 6 months, we have drawn attention to the land for sale behind the St Kilda Library, originally on the market at $9 million, but now for sale at approximately half this amount. Given the difficulty in obtaining new open space, we cannot understand why this land hasn't been more closely investigated instead of being dismissed. It's in St Kilda East. It could complement the library's redevelopment, is close to transport and could provide a valuable recreational hub for families with children living in apartments in Balaclava and St Kilda East. Finally, we had anticipated that some funding was to be provided for a scoping study for the Green Line.
Thank you. Councillors, that concludes item 4. Just based on the speaking summary here, please note later on the agenda, in terms of the reports, I'll change the agenda to go 10.4, 10.5, 10.6, 10.7, just based on the amount of speakers that we're here this evening, so they can get home as soon as possible. We now move, councillors, to your time, which is item number 5, councillor question times. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Consolo, go ahead.
Thank you. As part of a previous petition, there was an action to have a traffic survey of Bay and Lairdet Street intersection in Port Melbourne. Has this been done yet, or when can we expect it, please?
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. I'll ask Brian T to answer that question for you.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, Council did resolve to undertake a traffic survey as part of the resolution. Council has engaged an independent traffic expert to undertake that survey following that council resolution. The traffic survey was delayed because COVID restrictions meant that you couldn't have a regular traffic count. It wasn't under normal circumstances. So because of that COVID restrictions, that has been delayed until November. It is being undertaken, and we will get a report on the 22nd of January, which we will bring back to Council in March next year.
Thank you. No further questions. I'll now move to item 6, which is the sealing schedule. We have no items for sealing at tonight's agenda. Therefore, we move to item 7. Councillors, we have one petition on tonight's agenda, which is item 7.1, the petition in relation to dangerous Hoon driving, excessive noise and toxic fumes across Port Melbourne. Do councillors have any questions of the officers in relation to the recommendation or the report that's been put forward? Councillor Consolo, go ahead.
Thank you. Can council modify the message on the variable message sign at Station Pier? If yes, what is the process? If no, who is the responsible authority?
Thank you, Councillor Consolo. Brian T, I'll ask you to answer that question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, through you. Council can modify the message on the variable message sign at the Station Pier. We may require the permission of Vic Roads. We may require their approval. I'm not absolutely confident about that, but either on our own or together with Vic Roads' approval, we can modify that sign.
Thank you, Councillor Consolo.
So if we wanted to, for the next few weeks, how would I action that process?
Brian T.
If you would like to email me, I can respond to that request.
Councillor Clark, you have a question.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to ask, I saw that the mobile CCTV camera was going through an induction. However, a camera does get inducted. And I just wondered if that's now fully being utilised or if it's still in training, so to speak.
I can actually answer that one if you want me to have a go at it. So I spoke to police about this on Monday night. So they have completed testing. It's operative. And they're still going through their process of familiarising themselves with the equipment, but they confirmed with me on Monday night that the equipment is operating as they would expect, and they're training, I think, 3 staff on how to actually assemble and utilise the equipment. So I'm not aware of the formal induction process per se, but I'm sure officers can find some more information about it if they wish. Would any officer wish to add to that? No. Thank you, Councillor Clark, for your question.
Thanks.
Councillor Consolo.
Pardon me. I note that camera excuse me, has come and gone from Station Pier already. So is there an understanding of how it's going to cycle through? Or is it going to be when it's hot weather, when we're expecting some activity, when that mobile CCTV camera is going to come back to Station Pier because it's already been moved off?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Sorry, pardon me, who's that?
Oh, no.
Did you Dana, go ahead.
Tony? Okay. The CCT camera has been moved this weekend because we expect it to be very busy down in St Kilda given the heat, and so it's been moved down to South Beach Reserve for the weekend, but it will be moved around as needed and will go back to Station Pier soon.
Thank you. Councillor Clark has asked a question, so any further questions? No? Okay, councillors, we've got an officer's recommendation. Would you like to move this or something else? Councillor Consolo, go ahead.
I'll move an alternative motion, please.
Sure, no problem. If I just get you to read the components of the motion in red, that would be great.
On item 3, the addition of...
Sorry, just before we do, Councillor Clark has just asked... Do you mind if I just ask Councillor Clark to ask a question? She just came in a bit late. Councillor Clark, go ahead.
Sorry, I was busy typing. I just wanted to understand the difference between the officer's comment on the motion. It says install tactical cameras at Station Pier. Victoria Police, they will install tactical cameras. Is that somewhat different to the petitioner's questions around installing their request for installing CCTV cameras, including flashing blue lights. Is there a difference in cameras?
No problem. I presume this is a clarifying question in relation to Councillor Consolido's amendment, Councillor Clark?
Oh, no, sorry. I was trying to type a question before you moved to that. Sorry. But the timing was out by the time I sent it.
No, that's fine. No, it's just in clarification, that's all, because if it is a clarifying question in relation to the amendment, I'll get her to put the amendment first.
That's all right. If we've gone too far, that's okay.
Okay, no problem. Can somebody help me with the answer to that question?
Through you, Mayor. Dana,
Thanks.
are you able to help? I think the question is, are the police installing the tactical cameras at Station Pier, which is the officer comment? And
is that the same as what the petitioners are asking for?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. And then is that the same as part 2 of the petition, which is immediate installation of 6 obvious CCTV cameras? Can you clarify, Dana, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the police have installed some tactical cameras on the restaurants in the area. I'd need to clarify further with regards to the further 6 cameras. I'd have to take that part on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sorry, Councillor Clark, I misunderstood what your question was. Councillor Consolo, you were moving an amendment. I'll just get you to read the components in red, please.
Yes, please. On item 3, including additional wording of including consideration of an option to introduce speed humps at Station Pier. It should be item number 4, I think. Will be notes that over the summer months 2021, police will install tactical cameras at Station Pier, trial a mobile processing unit van with CCTV capability at Station Pier, and will deploy mobile speed cameras to Beaconsfield Parade and Pier Road. And then number 5 will be request that council officers working with Victoria Police to request regular police patrols at Station Pier over the summer months.
Thank you, Councillor Consolo. Do I have a seconder for that amended motion? Councillor Martin, happy to second. Councillor Consolo, please feel free to speak to your amended motion.
Thank you to the speakers tonight and the people in the community working on this. I have seen your videos of the incident described tonight. Whilst we haven't seen the effectiveness of the mobile CCTV camera for long, I note it's already been moved to another location. And I understand how disturbed our community has been from the noisy vehicles as well as the large gatherings showing off laps, including burnouts, right in front of the restaurants and in the residential area. A drag strip is an appropriate description. I've been down there myself to see it and shocked by how many people are there and their behaviour. I think we need to address this situation and will not rule out any solutions until it's been fully considered. And I would like to add the investigation to speed humps to physically alter the drag strip aspect of that area. And also, as we take a break, it's important for residents and businesses to be assured that there will still be council presence and police coordination in that area. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Councillor Martin.
Thanks, Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the petitioners. And can I thank the previous petitions? I think this is the 3rd or 4th petition that we've had from residents of Beacon Cove and Port Melbourne who are very concerned about local safety there. And I thank them, A, for the fact that they raised their concerns, and B, for the fact that they're always very constructive in their suggestions. I'd also like to thank the speakers today. They spoke from the heart. And again, we need to listen very carefully to our local residents. There are 2 very active groups in Port Melbourne that I'd like to bring Council's attention to. They are the Port Melbourne Road Traffic Safety Group and the Beacon Cove Neighbourhood Association. They regularly meet with Councillor Consolo, Councillor Pearl and myself, and again they've come up with a number of recommendations, some of which we've implemented and many of others I'm sure that they'll be bringing forward. So I thank them for their excellent and constructive recommendations. So given the information in the petition and given the fact that council officers will need to take some time to go over, work through the requests there, the amendments that Councillor Consolo has moved, I think, will make sure that we have a much safer foreshore and waterfront place area over the summer months, and then we can come back in the new year, perhaps with some more formal recommendations and some more formal additions. And I know that the Port Melbourne Road Traffic Safety Group also have some further recommendations that they'd like to bring towards Council early next year as well.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Would any other councillor like to speak for or against the motion? No, I'll ask Councillor Consolo to close. No. Therefore, let's put that motion to the vote. Councillors, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I now move to items 8 to 13, which is presentation of reports. Councillors, I'll change the agenda as I indicated before, and we'll go to item 10.4, which is Places for People, Public Space and Strategy. Public Place Strategy 2022 to 2032. Councillors, any questions you'd like to take up from councillor question time, or do you have any questions? Councillor Baxter, go ahead.
Thanks,
Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Sure. Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll take up Mr Sargood's question around the dogs at Elwood Primary School.
Catherine Pound, thank you for helping us tonight.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, in respect of the MO Moran Reserve, which is an action in the strategy to deliver a new dog off-leash area that will be going ahead. It's committed through funding that's been obtained from state government, and I understand that will be commencing next year. Notwithstanding that, there's also a key move within the strategy to investigate opportunities for new and review permitted times in existing dog off-leash areas in all open spaces, including beaches. So this presents an opportunity to review opportunities for off-leash areas throughout the municipality, including in Elwood. And that's a piece of work that, as I say, it's a key move, and work to scope that is underway and will be presented through next year's budget bid to Council to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crawford.
I'd just like to follow up on some questions about putting a land acquisition overlay. Is that process a long process, one to identify the most appropriate places, and is it like a planning amendment takes 2 years to put in place, and how long does it actually take to call it in if we decided that was the time to fund it? Do we have any idea?
Catherine Pound.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So there is a short-term action to develop a land acquisition and road discontinuance strategy, and that will set out how we go about acquiring land and implementing that, and that will happen as we do some other implementation work in the coming few years. The intention is that all of the land acquisition does happen within the 10-year timeframe of the public space strategy. There are processes to go through with land acquisition and road discontinuance, which includes design, consultation, formal approval processes through council, etc. So they do take time on a case-by-case basis. But the key point here is that just because because some of the actions that relate to acquiring land in the strategy say they're medium or long term, but that doesn't actually preclude them from occurring sooner should the opportunity arise in accordance with the strategy and those supporting documents, and councillors will be briefed on the development of those as well as opportunities as they arise. And I think Mr Carroll would like to say something.
Thank you, Catherine. Mr Carroll, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor, just listening to the feedback tonight, just to assure people that we are looking to move ahead quickly with our strategy around land acquisition and discontinuances. We probably will need to start that post the Christmas break. We're looking to get started in around March, and we will be looking at opportunities now that we have clear direction, around where to buy and the kind of scope and funding that we have available. We won't be delaying that. We'll be looking to move ahead as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
Can I just follow up then on that? So say that there's already the Packington Street overlay exists. Is that something that could be, as part of that strategy, once it's developed, called in earlier? Because I guess I've never done one before, so I'm just trying to understand, is it just a decision point, or do we have to come to an agreement with the current owners, or how does that actually come to be? Probably. Maybe it's not answerable right now.
Catherine Pound? No, it's going to bounce back to Chris Carroll.
I think at the moment you can see there's like intention around timings, but in terms of how it plays out, opportunities and the speed of the work that we'll do and how easy it is to implement as we do the feasibility, some of those timings can change. So we can look to bring forward, but the key piece of initial work is going to be that, the initial strategy piece. We are not planning to delay that, but we do need a little bit of time to get officers organised or work on a range of other things right now. And we will move forward as quickly as we can, and councils will continue to be involved in refining the timing of delivery based on those feasibility studies and the opportunities as they arise.
Thank you. Catherine, do you wish to add anything to that?
I'll just add to that through you, Mr Mayor, that I understand that work has in fact been happening on Packington Street to the extent it has an overlay on it already historically. So should the extent that work is already underway, that's not going to be halted by this work in terms of it can still progress and they can progress together. So this won't alter that.
I'll note that Councillor Copsey has declared a conflict of interest in relation to that item, but frankly I'm comfortable with her remaining in the chamber. But it's ultimately her decision, but I'm fine with that. I don't think it causes any huge issues. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
This may be a triple or quadruple barreled question, but if the public space strategy as tabled is accepted by Council tonight, is this a document that's locked in stone and is unable to be amended over the 10-year tenure? Or is it flexible so that if, for example, in the development of our new climate emergency action plan, actions come out of that which would impact on some of the things that are in the public space strategy, the public space strategy could then be amended so it could incorporate the recommendations that come out of the climate emergency action plan, for example? Is there a possibility through the annual budget process to make amendments to the public space strategy? And then last but not least, is it possible to apply for grants, perhaps state government or federal government grants, that could perhaps lead to speeding up some of the recommendations in the public space strategy, or perhaps add in additional ones? So do we have the flexibility to address each of those situations and perhaps any other situations that could arise?
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Catherine Pound.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. The intention of the strategy is that it is a live document that can be updated over the course of its 10-year life. So while we have formally locked in a review in 5 years, the intention is that it will be updated every year, and that will be through when we put projects through the budget process, when we go through the design and consultation on budgets. That may mean design and consultation on projects, that may mean that they need to change as well. Also, in addition to what Councillor Martin has referred to in respect of something like the Climate Emergency Action Plan coming into effect, again, yes, there is opportunity to make those updates in a live way, though that won't necessarily preclude the implementation through other mechanisms, such as the Greening Port Phillip strategy, which is due to be reviewed very shortly. Just looking at some of the other questions Councillor Martin asked. So yes, there is the possibility to amend the document through that yearly budget process. And in respect of potentially applying for grants to speed up recommendations, absolutely. Again, we have indicated short, medium or long-term timeframes, but again, that doesn't preclude them from happening earlier. And the opportunity, again, to apply for grants should they arise in respect of other opportunities, again, not precluded by the strategy. Thank you.
No, thank you. No further questions, councillors? All right. As a council has just declared an interest in one of the neighbourhood action line items, officers have reprinted the recommendation in two parts to enable the councillor to exit the chamber for consideration of the item for which they have a conflict and return for consideration for the remaining parts of the report. Councillor Copsey, thank you again for making a declaration. Would you like to do it again for us, please?
Thank you. I just declare that I own property within the general area of one of the action items, and out of an abundance of caution to avoid a potential or perceived conflict in the item, I'll remove myself from the meeting.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions in specific reference to item 3.1? There being none, I'm happy to move the 3.1 motion, or part 1 of the motion for item 10.4. Do I have a seconder?
Mr Mayor, can I just ask a quick procedural question? I have an amendment to this. Do I wait until part 2 has been moved separately before I move that amendment?
Yeah. I have it here that there's a proposed amendment that you've got here for item 3.7, is that correct?
That's right.
That forms part of part 2.
Yep, cool. So I'll just wait till part 2 is moved.
And just checking that's not in relation to anything that Councillor Copsey has a conflict with? No. Yeah, so again, I'm happy to move part 1, which encompasses 3.1. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Consolo, thank you. I don't wish to speak to the item. Councillor Consolo, do you? Any other councillor wish to speak to the item? No? Okay, I'll put that item to you, councillors. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. I'll now invite Councillor Copsey to rejoin us in the chamber and thank her again for her consideration of her conflict. Just give councillors, moving to part 2. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation or something else? Councillor Baxter, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Well, I believe I can move, rather than move an amendment, I can simply move an alt motion with just that amendment in it.
Just get you to read 3.7 out for me, Councillor Baxter.
No worries. So that's what I'll do. 3.7 will read, notes that the implementation of the Places for People Public Space Strategy 2022 to 2032 will focus on addressing gaps in the public space network, particularly in the Balaclava/St Kilda East and South Melbourne neighbourhoods, by trialling temporary new public space, expanding existing public spaces and exploring opportunities to acquire land and close roads to deliver permanent new public space.
Thank you. Looking for a seconder for the alt motion put by Deputy Mayor Baxter, and Councillor Crawford has the second. I'll ask you to speak to the motion. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And it's quite exciting to be here at this stage of the open space strategy, which has been something that has been in progress for a number of years now, and I worried that we might not ever get there. Open space has always been a massive issue for our community as we live in a sort of inner urban environment, which is becoming more and more densely populated, and access to open space is becoming sparser and sparser. So we've always had an imperative to increase access to public open space. We're also extremely lucky as a local government area to have the access to the foreshore that we have, and also to the very large Albert Park Reserve, although I will point out that there are large parts of the year when that is closed off effectively to a lot of the sort of recreation that people would like to use at Albert Park Reserve. Nevertheless, we're very, very lucky in that respect. There are shortages of public space all over the municipality, but one of the areas that is particularly short is one that doesn't have easy access to either the foreshore or to Albert Park Reserve, and that is an area that I represent, which is St Kilda East, and to a slightly lesser extent Balaclava, but still Balaclava as well. This is something that was obviously something that needed to be rectified, and obviously when we were campaigning for election, open space was something that I was pushing a lot for, particularly because I felt that the draft open space strategy that we released a number of years ago was not going to be adequate for what we wanted to do overall. And look, I'm still more ambitious than my fellow councillors on this. I'd love it to go even further, but I think this is a really good document in the end that I will support. So I supported doing a lot more back then, and then COVID hit, and the issue of access to public space and the value of public open space has actually become more apparent than ever to everybody. And just seeing the little park at the end of my street being filled with people having picnics and doing their best to socially distance but also spend some time with each other in a relatively safe outside environment was something that I hadn't seen at that park before, but is now relatively regular. I think people have fallen in love with their local parks all over again and are now recognising just how limited they are. So I'm hoping that this document goes a long way to addressing that issue, which will always be an issue in the city of Port Phillip. We will never have as much public space as the people here deserve because we're a small inner urban municipality and our population is growing all of the time. But we need to keep up, and we have a costed and planned out strategy here that will help us do that. And I am very keen to get started on that. I'm very happy to hear the officers talk about how quickly they want to get started on exactly the technicalities of how we're going to get that new space that we need. I want to acknowledge also the members of the community that have engaged with us over the years on open space. There are a range of different groups, but certainly most recently Pecan, who have made sure that we're continuing to keep our focus on those areas that are least serviced by public open space. And I really want to reassure the community that we recognise that as an issue and that we want to keep working on that. And if you think we're not doing it well enough, then let's continue to engage, and I'm more than happy to hear how we can do better. Finally, just want to say that if you look at a map of the open space in my ward, there's that big white area with no green on it that takes up a large chunk of the East St Kilda area, bounded by Inkerman, Alma, Hotham and Orrong. And one of the things that this plan does is pull a little bit of green right in the middle of that. And I think that's something that I can't wait to see. There's obviously a number of other really great things in here, but I just can't wait to see a map that finally has a little bit of green in the middle of that for the people that live there.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Baxter. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone, BEST as well as PCAN and PPP and the various other community members who have advocated very strongly, particularly for the Canal Ward area. I think I want to acknowledge your concerns, but I also want to acknowledge the hard work of the officers and councillors to get to this point. It's not everything. We have to narrow it down. We can't do everything. But I think what it sets out is we're playing the long game for some of those bigger spaces, particularly in East St Kilda, but we're also looking for the short-term opportunities, the quick and early wins, whether there's sort of Dickens Street or the pop-up along the Balaclava line. There are some opportunities where we can look to improve the amenity and provide some smaller open spaces that may, who knows, turn into permanent spaces. But I think the longer game is obviously land requisition, which is not an easy thing to take on. But it's not. But it's now down the strategy, and it's there it's mapped out, not necessarily in stone, but it's there, and we are addressing equity. But I do want to acknowledge that we're never going to get everything we want because we are a built-up inner city area. I also want to note we've brought on Ripponlea Gardens in the last few years, which is a huge win, and we are looking to advocate for Glenfern as well. So we're looking for those innovative, shorter-term goals while we deal with the bigger, more expensive, harder to get over the line, more controversial goals in terms of space. And the other reason I just wanted to put on the record, the Green Line project, although great, it's not actually open space. It's more amenity to me. And given the 5 years that I've been on council, we've had no luck with VicTrack yet. I don't want to put money into a strategy or developing anything until we have any kind of agreement from them to pursue that. And that's why we're looking at the pop-up things to see if there are ways that we can engage with them and get buy-in from them. And maybe the pop-up beautifying of that area and the greening of that area might happen in a different way. And so that's why I just wanted to put out there that the green line at the moment is an idea. I'm more interested in putting bigger, wider open spaces where people can have picnics. And so I think that we've narrowed down to a pretty good set of priorities. Imperfect as always, but I'm happy with where we've landed.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Who'd like to speak next, councillors, for or against the motion? Councillor Martin.
I'm speaking in favour, and I'm a little bit more relieved than I was half an hour ago. I'd like to firstly thank the council officers who've done an enormous amount of work in putting this huge document together. I'd also like to thank the council officers who responded to my questions at the start of this debate, because I was rather concerned that some things that are rather dear to me may get lost in the strategy. I'm pleased to see that we can incorporate recommendations that come out of things like our Climate Emergency Action Plan, that if we get money from the big build, we can make sure that there's open spaces provided, not just buildings. I'd like to thank the mover and seconder of this alt-rec, because even though as a Gateway Ward councillor, the three of us in Gateway are passionate about Gateway, I also said that there is a real need in East St Kilda Balaclava, and I'm really pleased that Councillor Baxter and Councillor Crawford have picked up on the need for us to expedite matters there. And I'm sure that in the budget process, if there are things in that area that we believe should be done as soon as possible, that some of us at least will make every effort to try and make sure that we expedite any developments in that area. So I think it's a great piece of work. Thanks to the officers. Thanks to those members of the community who've had input. As Councillor Crawford has said, no one can get everything they want, but at least we have a flexible document we can amend as necessary, and I'm sure we're going to have some fantastic outcomes.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillors, who else would like to speak to the motion? For or against? No. Deputy Mayor Baxter, I'll ask you to close if you wish.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I won't say a huge amount more, except to say that one of the things I neglected to talk about was some of the temporary or trial closures and those open space tests. I think are a really great way for us to look at how we can utilise all open space going forward, and that there are so many options going forward about how we can work with partners to utilise space, whether that be working with local schools to get better access to their open space, or working indeed with VicTrack to get access to their space for parts of the Green Line proposal, some of which I note are in this strategy as well. So while this has all sorts of good stuff, we can also be nimble and we can react and we can look to partner with others, and that's really exciting too.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. I now put that motion to you. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, as suggested before, I now move to the planning item, so just give the officers a chance to come to the front. We'll now hear 10.5, 10.6 and 10.7, so let's move now to item 10.5, which is the planning report for the rear of 285 to 287 Coventry Street and 10 Hotham Street, South Melbourne. Great, welcome. Councillors, questions in relation to this report? Go ahead, Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I've been contacted by local residents, and we've heard a few speak tonight on this item. I know there was a community consultation that I wasn't around for, but with the laneway they're speaking about to the back of the Coventry Street side, through that side, could there be a no standing sign in the laneway? Could there be a designated loading and unloading agreed location for the restaurant? And any of these sort of items, are there, if they have more concerns, how will these be handled? Is there like a venue management? Is that the noise and amenity action plan?
Brian T.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank the councillor for the question. The premises at the moment does have an existing restaurant, so this is about expanding their use with a liquor licence. In terms of the loading bay, and there's two parts, there's the noise and the loading bay, so I'll just start on the loading bay. The Currently, there are 2 loading bays nearby, so there is an on-street loading bay on Coventry Street, which is several metres west of the lane, and there's also a loading bay on Hotham Street at the Hotham Street entry to the restaurant. We don't think it's likely that there will be use of the laneway because it does require deliveries to reverse either in or out, and so it is more likely that you'll use one of those existing loading bays and or park on the street just because of the convenience of access. In terms of the noise, the recommendation in the report is for a noise and amenity action plan, which would require the business prior to commencement. And again, just to remind councillors, this is an expansion of a restaurant with a liquor licence, but notwithstanding that, the requirement will be for a noise and action plan, which must be made to council's officer satisfaction, and that must identify all the noises that are associated with the licensed premises, including music noise, entry and exit noise with the premises, and any external areas that are allocated for smokers. That needs to be identified. The hours of operation for all parts of the premises must be identified, and that must be consistent with the relevant conditions of the permit. Music will only be indoors only to manage that noise, and that must be identified in that action plan, and the frequency and the hours of operation, again, to the satisfaction of council. The report must identify any noise-sensitive areas. That includes residential uses nearby, as well as any other accommodation areas in close proximity to the licensed premises. And once they've identified those groupings, they must identify the measures that they are going to take to address these noise sources that they've identified. And that must include the measures, so they must identify measures to do that, but they must also identify measures that management and staff will take to ensure that patrons depart the premises and the surrounding area in an orderly manner and do not consume or take alcohol outside the premises. They must also have a standard procedure which they'll identify, which staff will undertake if there is a complaint by a member of the public or Victoria Police or indeed an authorised council officer, and the steps that they'll take. They must also, as part of the report, provide a telephone number to residents to contact the premises and a complaints register. So if you are a nearby resident or business who has had a complaint, you will have a dedicated number, and the premises must keep a log of those, and that complaints register must be made available to council when requested.
Thanks. Councillor Consoli, go ahead.
So to clarify, on the no standing sign, is that possible to implement? And if so, do I need to put an amendment through?
We can have a look at the no standing sign. It's not just the nature of it. We don't know whether it's necessary because of the fact that it is a laneway where it is difficult to, and where there is no parking capacity there. We can have a look at it and review it. I suppose our concern is just the additional sort of visual clutter that the signage would have, but we are able to go and have a look at that, separate to this process and this permit.
But in answer to Councillor Consoli's question, there's no need to put that as an amendment. We can look at that separately as an undertaking.
Yes, we can.
Thanks for the clarification. Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just following up from Councillor Consola's question, is there any reason that any trucks delivering goods would still not use that lane if there were no standing sign put in place?
Brian T.
I think just as a practical matter, they'd either have to reverse in or reverse out. There are 2 nearby dedicated laneways, loading zones nearby, as well as on-street parking. So we don't think it's likely. It's currently not the norm in terms of current deliveries to the restaurant tend not to go up and down the laneway. There may be from time to time, but the general, our understanding is that generally the loading bays are being used as well as on-street parking for loading.
Thank you. No further questions, councillors? Councillors, you have an officer's recommendation in front of you. Do I have a move for this recommendation or something as an alternate? Councillor Copsey to move. And a seconder. Councillor Martin, thanks very much. Councillor Copsey, over to you. You don't wish to speak? No problem. Councillor Martin. Any other councillors? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. There was a community consultation meeting on this, and I'm sorry I wasn't at that, but the report back to me from other councillors was that it was a lot of agreement, and the people present at that were more on the Hotham street side. So when we've heard now from the other side, it's sort of been moved over there, and their concerns are more about access and making sure that they can still get in and out of their properties, that there are car parks and garages there. So I think it's very important that we are addressing that, and the venue management plan through the noise access, I forget the name, action plan. And that's why I will be supporting it tonight, because I think there are measures there, and that we can also address this through parking enforcement as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. I'll quickly speak to it also. We went through a rigorous consultation process on this item, as Councillor Consolo referred to, and I actually think it was a very productive meeting, which was chaired by Councillor Martin at the time, and both sides came together to make, I think, some reasonably good concessions which are incorporated into this document. I would note also that there has been a change of operator, well, not operator per se, but manager at the venue, so I would hope that council's kept informed about the progress of what is a fairly complicated or complex permit condition process, which will require a fair bit of work as the permit conditions are fulfilled. And obviously, if the residents and surrounding businesses don't feel that those conditions are being appropriately adhered to, I would strongly encourage them to contact council and councillors if required also. But we went through a good thorough process on this. I think the balance in what I've read in the file here is appropriate, and I'm happy to support it this evening, and I thank the officers for their leadership in getting us to this point this evening. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion, councillors? Councillor Copsey doesn't wish to close. I'll put that motion to you. All those in favour? Those against? That motion is carried. Councillors, I now move to item 10.6 rather, which is Planning Report 81 Beacon Vista, Port Melbourne. And just wait for the officers to switch over. Yeah, we might just take a little rest for a minute or so, just a quick recess for 2 or 3 minutes just to check Councillor Clark's sound, if that's okay. So we'll just come back at 42 minutes past, if we could take a recess. Internet connection, and when it surges, it causes a gap in the WebEx of between 1 and 5 seconds. So unfortunately, when we went to the vote last time, it had a small surge, and you dropped out briefly. So we'll do a little mitigation strategy to ensure that doesn't happen again.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Let's feel the surge. Welcome back, Councillor Martin. We good to go? Okay. Councillors, we're at item 10.6, which is the planning report in the 81 Beacon Vista in Port Melbourne. Questions of the officers in relation to the report? Councillor Consoli, go ahead.
Thank you. There are some discussion plans that have been circulated and seen by councillors. Was that ever put on the website?
Brian T.
I might ask one of the council planners just to assist on that question, Mayor.
Thanks, Brian.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they weren't put on the website, but they were circulated today or yesterday.
Sorry,
to the objectors?
Objectors?
Only through the email today.
But to the objectors, it was emailed to the objectors?
It was emailed to yourself, and then it was asked if it was to be passed on to the objectors, but not to all of the objectors.
Yep, okay.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Any further questions in relation to this item? All right, councillors, you've got an officer's recommendation. Would you like to move this or something else? Councillor Martin to move the officer's rec. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Copsey, thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
We've been to consultation over this, and there are a number of concerns from the objectors with the original plans. There's been a lot of backwards and forwards discussion, and I think after quite a bit of work we've come to a compromise that I believe is a fair and reasonable compromise. Unfortunately, the documents that appeared on our website over the last couple of days were the previous plans. The description in the motion is accurate, but the documents that appeared, and I believe the objectors and councillors have now got the correct ones, did show the original plans, which were the ones that we had scaled down. But the new developments, I believe, after having gone through the consultation process, probably are quite a reasonable compromise.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Copsey, would you like to speak to this item? No. Any other councillors wish to speak to it? Councillor Consolo.
Thank you. I do think there might have been a miscommunication and those plans were not circulated. I did send them to somebody, but I'm not sure if it went on. So it's, yes, the consultation meeting addressed a few items, and I think that the new plans, there's a big improvement on the roof, bringing that down, and so that the tower reads as the predominant element in that corner site. It's a very important site. And I understand the concerns around the garage coming forward, and hopefully that does not make a precedent. But in this situation, I think it'll work as well, as long as parking is also abided by, not blocking the footpath in front of the garage. And this project, it's a very generous house, but this site is probably the one that can handle it. And it is. Those are tight sites. They really are. They're right on top of each other, but there's still a lot of amenity around them. So I will be supporting this tonight because of the improvements to that roof form. And yes, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Any further speakers to this item? Councillor Martin, would you like to close? I put that motion to you, councillors. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Let's move to item 10.7, which is the planning report for 464 to 466 St Kilda Rd. Questions of the officers, councillors? I've got a question actually. I'll just start it off. The road access to St Kilda Road and the laneway issues potentially. Actually, let me just do it this way. I'll take up the. I don't have the speaker's name, but I did email the questions to you. If we just take up the questions of the objector that was asking questions in relation to the traffic plan for the site and the impact on the laneway, particularly with the reduction of the laneway from the St Kilda Road side.
Through you, Mayor, if I can start the answer to that. There was essentially there are two issues in terms of the laneway, which does have, there have been a number of concerns raised in relation to use and access through that laneway. So what is recommended in the report to try and address that is that there is a review within the next 12 months which has a look at the function of the Queen's Lane between Hannah Street and Kingsway, including traffic management and functionality, so that review occurs and comes back to Council within 12 months. In terms of this specific project, the report, the traffic plan is included in the report. The issues are addressed at pages 30, 59 and 60, but essentially the capacity of the lane is 5,000 vehicles per day. Currently there are 2,000 vehicles using that per day. The development is anticipated to increase the number of vehicles at 33 per hour during peak time. So on those figures, the capacity of the laneway is sufficient to manage this additional development. But having said that, there is recognised a requirement to have a review of the functionality of the laneway overall, and that's the recommendation. Would you like me just to go through the other?
Yeah, if you could. Sorry, the person that was asking was Diane D'Orazio. So, and perhaps if we start with the Moreton Bay tree protection, which was question 4.
Yes. So yes, there is a FIG, and the concern was raised about the protection of that tree and the impact of the development. It is on the other side of the road, so we do not anticipate that it is something that council officers have considered, and it is not something that we anticipate will be impacted by the development. There may be a need for some overhanging branches to be trimmed, but we are not concerned about the safety of that tree.
Thanks. Feel free to go through the other 2 questions. So in relation to safety and security during the construction period, and also discounts, presumably in rates during the construction period.
Yes, so in terms of the safety and security during construction, and again, some of these issues are picked up in the report, but there is a requirement for a construction management plan, or that will be in place. Council officers will also, during the construction, be engaged at the site and will ensure that there are appropriate safety measures such as barriers, hoardings, and potentially the use of some parking spaces for the development, ensuring that they are made safe. And if required for safety, there will be a partial street closures if required. In terms of the final part of the question, which is the suggestion for a rates discount, that is not a policy of council to provide rates discount for while there is construction underway.
Thanks, Brian T. Any Councillor Consolo? Councillors, you have an officer's recommendation. Would you like to put that or an alternative? Councillor Martin. And a seconder, Councillor Copsey. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor. I was involved in the consultation process, and I believe that although many of the objectors who had genuine concerns, I've seen that most of their concerns have been alleviated by the responses of the council officers and through the involvement of the applicant. I have major concerns about traffic in Queens Lane, but I believe that's separate to this development. I'm heartened to hear that we're going to be looking at what's happening in Queens Lane, but I don't believe that this development is going to cause a major impact on what's already can be an occasionally chaotic situation in Queensland, usually due to parking illegally rather than anything to do with development. So, heartened to hear that the Queensland issue is going to be accepted. Otherwise, I'm quite comfortable with where the officer's recommendation is.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Councillor Copsey? No? Any other? Councillor Consola, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a unique situation to have a building that is heritage to be demolished and then reconstructed, and it'll retain the same look and vibe and the scale up to the pedestal and then increase from there. So although it's a nice pedestrian interface to St Kilda Rd, I do have my concerns about putting more vehicles on Queens Lane. I've asked the councillors, and this has come through the recommendation as well in the consultation, that there is that Part B, item 3.4, that will have that review in the next 12 months, and I think that's very important for us to have, not just look at it now, but keep looking at it as this area is developed further. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Consolo. Any further speakers for or against the motion? I'll put that, sorry, Councillor Martin, would you like to close? I'll put that motion to you then, councillors. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. That concludes the planning items, and thank you to officers for preparation of those reports. We'll now move back to the original order on the agenda you have in front of you. We'll now move to item 8.1, which is the presentation of the CEO reports, and happy to take your questions, councillors. No questions? Do I have a mover or a second? And Councillor Martin to move. A seconder, Councillor Copsey. Thank you. Councillor Martin, go ahead.
When I first came on council 12 months ago, I was very excited to get my council reading pack. I'm no longer as excited, but I do my due diligence. One thing I do enjoy reading is the CEO's report. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things there. For those of you who haven't read it line by line, and for anyone who's watching on WebEx, please make sure you read it. The amazing work that our council officers did in addressing the storm damage that we had from last month. Amazing stuff there. Great to see the vaccination campaign. Interesting to see a local football club with young female players in that football club included in a photo of part of the council social media campaign that's improved our vaccination rates. Mr Keenan behind me, I'm sure you're delighted with the decrease in numbers of rough sleepers with the success of our Port Phillip Zero program. That's, I think, an amazing achievement by our council. One of my former students rang me the other day to say she just completed the Environmental Leaders program. What an outstanding program that was, and we've had a number of other participants in that program get onto us. Again, we need to publicise these outstanding achievements. And lastly, on a downside, of course, always have a look at the budget figures, and our cash surplus is nowhere near what we expected. We're going to survive the year, it would appear, but we don't have a whole lot of scope for major new decisions. But Mr Smith, thank you so much. It's probably the most interesting thing that I look forward to every month.
Thanks, well put, Councillor Martin. Councillor Copsey. Any other councillors for or against the motion? I'll just note also that Councillor Baxter and I had the pleasure of meeting the staff today that put the report together, and it was interesting to note just the amount of effort that the staff put into producing this report, and we sincerely appreciate this report and look forward to the ones into the new year. Councillor Martin, would you wish to close? I'll now put that motion to you, councillors. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Let's now move to item 10.1, which is the intention to sell 351 St Kilda Rd, St Kilda. Councillor Copsey, go ahead.
Thank you once again. I own property within the general area, and out of an abundance of caution, to avoid a potential or perceived conflict in the item, I will remove myself from the meeting.
Thanks for doing that. Councillors, your questions in relation to this item, please. You have an officer's recommendation in front of you. Do you wish to move this or something as an alternative? Deputy Mayor Baxter and Councillor Crawford's a second. Councillor Baxter, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to thank the submitters for their submissions as per the motion, and we'll come back once we've considered the feedback.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Crawford, any further? And I presume, no, the Deputy Mayor doesn't wish to close. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll just wait for Councillor Copsey to return to the chamber. Welcome back. Item 10.3, the Palais Theatre and Luna Park Precinct Revitalisation. Councillors, questions in relation to the item? Yep. Unless you want to speak to it. No questions. I'm looking for a mover to item 10.3. Councillor Bond to move. Councillor Copsey the second. Councillor Bond, over to you.
Just to say that I look forward to this being built and implemented. I note there has been some commentary and a recent media article on this. However, this project has been around, it's not new, it's been around for about 12 or 18 months. It's been delayed because of COVID. We could have chosen to commence the build, I think it was a month or two ago it was going to commence, but we've decided to delay it during summer to give the businesses that trade in that area an opportunity to maximise their summer trade before we commence the works in the area out the front. Couple of comments about what's happening here. It's more than just a park and a plaza. It's also has a high degree of hostile vehicle mitigation measures implemented into the street furniture, the plantings and various other elements of the site, which is something that unfortunately we have to take into consideration when are looking at our public spaces in and around Port Phillip, particularly St Kilda. The second element to it is, I think as people have said, the loss of car parking in this area is going to be a problem when there are events on, but anyone who's been down in that area on an event day would notice or would have observed that whenever there's an event on at the Palais, that whole area is sealed off with metal barricades, so people cannot park in that area on an event day anyway. And those metal barriers are to give the crowd space to mill outside before the event and to exit the building post an event. And all this is project's doing, I shouldn't say all this is doing, it's doing lots of things, but what this project is doing is making that milling area permanent and suitable to the milling of people outside the Palais. I think it's going to be wonderful for that particular space and creating a much more attractive area outside the great Palais Theatre building than we have at present, which is just a bitumen road and car parks and not the best of streetscape. So I commend this project and the officers who have worked on it. I think this is going to be a wonderful outcome for this particular area. So I urge you all to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Bond. Councillor Copsey. No, who else would like to speak to the item for or against the motion? Councillor Bond, you wish to close? I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. I'll now move to item 13.1, which is the progress on rating strategy and waste strategy reviews. Councillor's question in relation to item 13.1. Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
We've taken a long time to come to this point where we're looking at the rating strategy, both looking at the what method of rating structure we will be using, also a waste charge. I'm just wanting to ask council officers if they could clarify that in this motion it mentions that we'll be looking at an option 5, which covers those 2 points of a rating strategy and waste charge. When we go out to consultation, will the community be, can they basically look at these 2 points as separate items and not necessarily being locked together?
Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor. We will engage on a preferred option, so the option as presented, but we will make sure the engagement process is clear on the sub-elements and enable people to provide feedback through that process on each of the sub-elements, so addressing the councillor's concern. It is also open to people through that engagement process to provide feedback on what they like, what they don't like, and other alternative options, and all that will be presented back to council to consider as we further progress those options. Noting this is just an early engagement piece, and there's still opportunity to further refine the proposal as we move ahead into the budget process.
Thanks, Councillor Sirikoff. Councillor Clark, can you still hear us?
I can, but I can't hear Chris very well. He's very faint.
It's very faint?
Yes.
Oh, Chris was very faint. Okay, we'll do something to adjust that. But thanks for the feedback. Okay, councillors, there being no further questions, you have an officer's rec in front of you. Would you like to move that or something else? Councillor Copsey, thank you to move. Councillor Martin to second. Councillor Copsey, over to you.
I'll just reserve, thanks.
Councillor Martin.
Just hope those people who are watching on WebEx and those people who are very keen to read the council minutes will have a look at this straight away, and I hope that our comms are very, very clear so our community have every possible opportunity to be involved. And this is one of the major decisions that council makes. Let's hope we get full community engagement and come to an excellent result at the end of it.
Thanks, Councillor Martin. Who else would like to speak to this item? Councillor Crawford, go ahead.
Well, there is the opportunity. There will be some deep diving happening, deliberative engagement in the new year. So there's an opportunity to register via Have Your Say if you are interested. We need a diverse part of the community, not just the people, the awesome people that we hear from all the time. But if anyone is vaguely listening to this, it would be great to get a wide variety of people across the municipality. As we look forward, around how we structure our rates, but also how we implement a waste charge to address the challenges in that space.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Anybody else wish to speak for or against? Councillor Copsey, over to you to close.
Thank you. Yes, it's an important conversation, and I am really pleased. The Local Government Act gives us the remit to do more in the deliberative engagement space. It's something that Port Phillip has done quite a bit of good work on in the past few years, so it's exciting that this conversation is continuing. And I just wanted to highlight that it actually is an exciting conversation as well. Waste is one of the areas where we've faced some severe headwinds over the last few years, what with the combined effects of the recycling crisis and the COVID pandemic. And we know that it's an area in which our community wants to see a real uplift in service. So please do register and get involved in the conversations that are coming up around this topic. Help us get to the right solution for our community, and I look forward. I'm pleased to see these reviews progressing and look forward to the community feedback on them. They're both really important topics.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Councillors, I'll put that motion to you. All those in favour? Those against? Motion carried. Now move to item 13.2, which is Council Plan and Budget 2022-2023 direction setting. Questions in relation to the item? Councillors, you have an officer's recommendation in front of you. Would you like to move that or something else? Looking for a councillor. Deputy Mayor Baxter to move. And thank you, Councillor Copsey, for seconding this item. Councillor Baxter, over to you.
I'll reserve.
Councillor Copsey. Any other councillors wish to speak for or against the item? Deputy Mayor Baxter, back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. This sort of goes hand in hand with the rating strategy and waste strategy reviews as we plan for how we're going to operate going forward. And I'm looking forward to seeing how we go over the next year over this whole journey.
Thanks, Councillor Baxter. I put that motion to you. All those in favour? All those against? Motion's carried. Councillors, I now seek a mover, which I'm happy to move this for a motion that the remaining items be moved en bloc. Those items being 10.2, 13.3, 13.4, 13.5 and 13.6. So I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Martin to second. I don't wish to speak to that item. It's a procedural motion, but you're welcome to speak to it if you wish. Councillors, I'll put that motion to you. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I'll now move to item 14, which is notice of motion. There are no notice of motions this evening, councillors, so we'll move to item 15, which is reports by council delegates. Councillor Copsey, go ahead. Thank you.
I actually do have a report. I'm the councillor representative on SECA, the South Eastern Climate Change Council's Climate Change Alliance, and I wanted to give an update on the launch of the Asset Vulnerability Assessment tool that SECA has been working on. I attended the launch of this morning, and it's a fantastic tool that means I think that Port Phillip is actually at the leading edge of this, not only in our region but probably in the state, and I wanted to acknowledge the incredible work that Port Phillip officers have put into the development of this tool. It's going to give our council an absolute edge when it comes to assessing the potential impacts of climate on our council assets, which being a bayside municipality and having some areas which are unfortunately already vulnerable to heat stress is really, really important in our asset management planning. So I think that Council is going to be very well informed thanks to the excellent efforts of officers, and also that experience is going to be available to be shared not only across our region but with local governments across the state and the country. So I just wanted to give that update. Congratulations to the SECA team for advancing this incredibly important work, but particularly thank you to our officers for being so involved.
Thanks, Councillor Copsey. Deputy Mayor Baxter.
Thank you, Mayor. And while Councillor Copsey was in that meeting with SECA, I was in the next room in a meeting with, not a meeting, but a forum with the Association of Bayside Municipalities, talking about pretty similar stuff, but in a different way, around summer preparedness for local councils on Port Phillip Bay. And it was an extremely informative session, and I know that our council officers are working really closely with the ABM and other member councils about how we can best prepare for the summer, and I have to say that our officers are probably the best at that in the entire ABM, given the unique challenges that we have to face every summer here. But it just goes to show the real value that that this council and its community gets out of our memberships in both the ABM and SECA, that with being able to share that knowledge.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Baxter. Any other reports, councillors? Councillor Crawford, thank you.
I'm going to do one. I forgot to ask Councillor Bond about this one, but I might mention that a few of us went to the Gasworks launch last night, and it was an excellent program, and there is so much to do and see and participate in over the next year at Gasworks, so it's definitely worth checking out their website. It was really impressive. But I should also give a plug as a delegate on the Linden Arts Gallery. The infamous and famous Linden Postcard Show is open over the Christmas period if you're looking for something exciting to do or some exciting little artwork to buy. It's now happening, so lots of creative, exciting things that will be coming to the municipal or are in the municipality at the moment. And the other thing I wanted to mention, not that we are delegates on it, but the Committee of Melbourne has had many interesting events, and I went to another one on federal election 2022 and some insight polling around what's happening and where they think things will go and insights. So I just wanted to mention that that has been very valuable membership this year as well.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Councillor Sirikoff, go ahead.
Since this is the last meeting for the year, and since people are very proud of the events that are happening around here, notably the Gasworks events, which unfortunately I could not attend, I would like to promote over the next 2 Sundays the St Kilda Esplanade Market, and they're having special events there and a special guest turning up to promote the market, and I hope that everybody can go along there and buy something special for their friends, their family, and that person that they had in their bubble over the past 12 to 18 months. And I hope you enjoy the artisan market on the Esplanade Market. Esplanade.
Thank you. Any others? No? All right. Thank you for that. I now move to item 16, which is urgent business. Councillors, we have 2 items of urgent business tonight. The first relates to Moran Reserve Dog Park. The second item is in relation to M Pavilion, and this matter is confidential. It will be considered in the confidential section of the agenda this evening. So I need a motion to consider items of urgent business. I seek a mover and a seconder for Council to accept the item of urgent business in relation to Moran Reserve Dog Park. Councillor Copsey, thank you, and Deputy Mayor Baxter, thank you for seconding that. I put that motion. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. So item 16.1 now forms part of Moran Reserve Dog Park project options. Thank you to the officers that are still online. Are there any questions of the officers in relation to this item? You have an officer's recommendation.
Marcus, I have a question.
Go ahead. Sorry, I missed your text message.
No, I didn't. By the time I put in the password and then put in PIN, I wanted to understand how the budget is 160,000 over budget. What has come up that wasn't thought about from the original project?
Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor, I'll start, and if there's an officer online who can add some more detail, that would be great. I think initially we looked at an opportunity through DWELP grant funding to maximise the amount of funding we could receive, and we plan to develop a dog park within that budget. As we've gone through design, we can achieve a basic dog park within that budget. I think it's just a little bit over. It's around $18,000, $20,000 over. But in terms of best practice provision of dog parks, the team have advised a range of requirements that would normally be seen and then scoped up the design on that basis, which has come with a larger cost increase. The preferred option is actually more than $160,000. I think it's up to $514,000, which would be about $240,000 more than the budget, but the officers have come up with a middle ground approach. Well, it's more than middle ground, but with what they believe is the best value for money approach in terms of paring back on some of the garden beds and the plantings, which makes it $160,000 over. But in terms of the additional costs, it's things like some of the additional infrastructure around the park to make it more usable, more accessible, and better all-round facility.
Sorry, could I just clarify?
Just before you do, I'll just give the opportunity for Lachlan or Lucas, if they're online, if they wish to add to Chris's comments. Go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Sorry, are you saying that originally you designed it based on the DELP level of funding and then subsequently having proceeded with the project, you've realised that these things are essential for the project? Have I misunderstood that?
Just a reminder to direct the questions through the chair if you could, but Chris Carroll.
Through you, Mayor. I think initially there was a funding opportunity and council officers sought to do the best they could to maximise that funding opportunity within that envelope. I think for a while we've understood that there are a range of additional things that we'd like to see in an ideal dog park. The team have now gone through the design process. When we put in the application, obviously it's very early and we wouldn't have done detailed design on all the things that are required. We've now done that. We've got an option here which does fit within the budget envelope. There are alternative options for councillors to consider to achieve better value for money.
Thanks, Chris Carroll. Councillor Clark, do you have any further questions?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
And sorry, what bucket of money is the additional 160,000 coming from?
Chris Carroll.
The proposal is for it to come from the open space reserve.
Thanks, Councillor Clark.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions, councillors? You've got an officer's rec in front of you. Please feel free to move this or something as an alternative. Do I have a mover? Councillor Bond to move, Councillor Consolo to second, and Councillor Bond over to you to speak too. Councillor Consolo over to you to speak if you wish.
Yeah, thank you. I know in these projects, if we add these items later, these are some standard items that people will really want in a dog park, like seating and rubbish bins and drinking fountains. It'll be much more expensive, so I appreciate that they've been picked up now. And although they're an additional cost, I think that they would always be requested of us, and so this will be a better result. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Consolo. Who else would like to speak for or against the item? Go ahead, Councillor Crawford. Thank you.
It's been a while to get to this point, so it's very exciting. We knew this dog park was coming, so it's been for a while. And although we're not going to have, if we accept the recommendation. We won't have the extent of planting. I am very glad to see the level of planting that is there, because that was one of the key concerns, that it just wasn't a fence that, that on our foreshore area. So I'm very happy with the design. We know often that doing things half-heartedly, in the end, you end up scrabbling in time and money to fill in those gaps. So let's do it properly the first time, and I think this will be a really great opportunity for our dog lovers to take their pooches towards not the beach but the foreshore and enjoy this area.
Thanks, Councillor Crawford. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Being a bit presumptuous here. Councillor Bond, would you wish to close? I now put that motion. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Councillors, we now move to confidential matters. There's 2 items of confidential reports listed on the agenda. And plus the additional one from item 16, which is the item of urgent business. So 3 in total, they being 17.1, 17.2, 17.3. We make it 17.3, or is it 16? It'd be 16.2, right? It'd be 16.2. So I now call upon a councillor to move that the meeting be closed to members to the public to consider confidential items. I'm happy to move. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Bond, thank you. I'll now put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Before we close the meeting, I'll just thank officers for a long year. 31 meetings. This is the 31st meeting, so thank you particularly to our staff behind the scenes that put all this together. Thank you. And our trusted governance advisors also, but also the executive leadership team who are all here this evening. Chris, Brian, Tony, Kylie, and also Mr CEO. Thank you for your leadership through the year. So please pass that our good wishes from the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and the councillors to all your staff for their commitment throughout the year. And we wish them a very happy holiday period and looking forward to seeing them back in 2022. And the 10th Councillor, Teresa. Thank you, Teresa. Enjoy. Councillors, we'll now conclude the public part of the meeting in WebEx. I advise the members of the public that there is no further open items to be discussed. This will conclude the public part of the meeting, and we thank you all for joining us tonight.